Around 3 a.m., I picked up a passenger in the back seat of my car, only to find out a few hours later that they were actually dead. And after that night, I could never drive a night taxi again. My name is Murat. I'm currently 34 years old and I've been a taxi driver working the night shift for many years. Normally, I love working at night. There is no traffic, the roads are calmer, and customers generally travel short distances. But after an incident I experienced 2 years ago, driving at night has never been the same for me. Because what I learned about the passenger I took in the back seat of my car that night still makes my skin crawl whenever it comes to mind. Night shift taxi drivers see many strange things. Drunk people, fighting couples, people on the run. But what I experienced that night was like none of those. What I encountered that night might not even have been human. My night shift had begun. It was exactly 0:15. The city was silent, the roads empty. The sound of my car's engine echoed in the darkness of the night like a grander, lonelier sound. I had said my name was Murat, but in the world of night taxis, everyone only knows the names driver and passenger. You don't talk to anyone else much more than that. That night was one of my normal nights. I only picked up 1 or 2 passengers along the way. Usually at these hours it would be either drunk people or workers returning home from the night shift. But around 1:40, a call to my phone changed my entire plan. The call was simple. "Hello, can you come to the old industrial zone 15 minutes away from the city center?" The number was unknown. The voice was clear, calm, and strangely cold. In that moment, I felt something. This wasn't a normal passenger call. A mixture of fear and curiosity circulated within me. But this is my job. I had to earn money. I hung up the phone and set off. When I arrived at the industrial zone, the air was cold and windy. The streetlights were dim, the place is desolate. As my car's headlights hit the dusty ground, they seemed to create long shadows. When I stopped the car, I saw a human silhouette in the back seat. At first, I thought it was a normal passenger, but something was different. The passenger was motionless. They got in, their coat looked old and dirty, but the strangest thing was their eyes. When I saw them, an ice-cold chill gripped my insides. The eyes were empty and lifeless. "Hello, where are you going?" I said. My voice was trembling, though I didn't realize it. The passenger did not answer. They only nodded their head slightly. The journey began. Silence. A dead silence. There was no sound other than the car's engine, but a feeling inside me. There was something watching us. I looked in the mirror several times. It felt like I saw a silhouette looking at me without blinking. But in the mirror, only the passenger's back was visible. The streets were empty and the shadows of old factories stretched out. When the car's headlights hit the metal walls, it was as if there were hidden eyes behind those walls. The passenger was still silent, but as they sat in the back seat, they seemed to be leaning slightly toward me. My first suspicions began. Is this a joke, or have I fallen into the hands of a madman? I said to myself. But suddenly I realized the passenger wasn't breathing. The silence in the car remained unbroken. There was only the sound of the engine and the wind. My heart began to beat rapidly. I wanted to touch the passenger, but fear held me back. I noticed something. I reached out my hand, but they were not warm at all, just like a dead body. Cold. At that moment, my phone vibrated. A message arrived. The moment you notice me, you can no longer turn back. The moment I read that message, I felt like my heart would stop. I put the phone in my pocket, but I couldn't take my eyes off the back seat. The passenger was still silent, motionless, but it was as if an energy was radiating toward me. A feeling inside me said, "This is not a human." Along the way, the gates of the factories we passed and the metal walls created long shadows in my headlights. With every step, it was as if these shadows were following me. I looked in the mirrors. The passenger's face was visible, but their eyes were completely empty, lifeless. It was as if they had left their entire life right there. This cannot be human, Gaon, I said to myself. But as a taxi driver, it wasn't right to panic. I had to stay calm and act normal. As the car turned to bend, the passenger suddenly turned their head and looked at me. Their eyes, those empty eyes, were actually completely black. My inside turned to ice. I took a deep breath, but there was a knotted feeling in my throat. At that moment, I thought, is this a nightmare or is it real? The silence did not last long. The passenger suddenly whispered, "You noticed me. Now you can't go back." The voice was cold and metallic, like the voice of a dead soldier. But they hadn't even opened their mouth. It was as if this voice vibrated out of the air inside the car. For a moment, my mind was confused. I wanted to ask who, what, why, but the words got stuck in my throat. The passenger tilted their head a bit more. It was as if they were watching me, counting my heartbeats. Meanwhile, we had reached the edge of the city. There was an abandoned parking lot there, full of metal gates and old containers. The passenger said, "Get out here." I heard it in my mind without hearing a sound. I stopped the car. It was silent and dark on all four sides. I opened the door, but the passenger wasn't moving. I approached them and lightly held their hands. At that moment, something terrifying happened. The passenger stretched their hands toward my face, but never touched me. It was as if they were checking my face with an invisible force. Then they took a step back and I looked behind them, but the passenger was no longer there. We had been sitting in the car, but now there was an empty seat. My heart was pounding. I thought, how can this be? Am I seeing a hallucination or have I encountered a legend? At that moment, my phone vibrated again. I looked at the screen. "I saw you. Do not go out on the road alone again." The inside of the car was filled with a cold and strange energy. The passenger was no longer fully visible, but their presence was felt all around me. Only a silhouette was visible in the darkness. The area around their hands and body was somehow blurred and transparent. The scariest thing was the passenger talking without opening their mouth. It was as if the words were filling my mind. The message, "I saw you, you can't go back," echoed in my mind once more. I gathered my voice and said, "Who? What do you want?" They didn't answer. They just turned in the car and pointed at the surroundings. Old factories, metal containers, empty parking lots. But one detail was different. Everything seemed to change in connection with my heart. Every movement of the passenger, every look increased the coldness of the air and lengthened the shadows. For a moment I looked behind me. The back seat was empty, but I felt that they were sitting there, aware of my breath and my heartbeat. I opened the door and got out of the car. The passengers seemed to have disappeared the moment I saw them, but as I took a step, a voice came from the darkness. "You cannot leave me." I looked back. The passenger now appeared to be stuck to the ground. Even if they weren't in the physical world, they were playing a game with me. With every step I took, their shadow enveloped the front and sides of my car. Surprisingly, the passenger appeared inside the car again, but this time their face was decayed and black. Immediately, a cold wind passed across my face and a deep fear grew inside me. "Now you are finished, Murat," the passenger said. The voice seemed to come from underground. My heart was slowly stopping. I looked at my phone. The screen was blank. There were no messages, no calls. Only an energy filled with that voice. An instinct came from within me. I had to start the car and escape. I started the engine, but my car wouldn't move at all. The passenger looked as if they were sitting in the back seat, but there was no physical contact. It was as if they had become a force pervading the interior of my car. It continued like this for a few minutes. Then the passenger disappeared for a moment, but a wave of cold air that remained in their place enveloped my entire car. It was as if the presence of a dead person remained inside me. At that moment, I realized that in this part of the night, there is no turning back. The passenger is playing with me, watching my every move and quietly observing my fear. The inside of my car was still ice cold. The passenger was no longer fully visible, but I felt their presence with every move I made. It was as if my eyes could not see them, but I felt them in the deepest layers of my soul. In that moment, I understood this passenger was not just a person. There was a history, a secret behind them. The factories, containers, and old roads we passed along the way seemed to protect them, hiding their secret. My car's engine vibrated silently, but with every glance from the passenger, the air seemed to grow heavy. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. There was no message, but the screen turned on by itself. An image appeared there. A photo taken of myself, but the backseat was empty. I felt like my heart was going to stop. I wanted to reach out, but the passenger had vanished again. I took a step and my car's headlights suddenly went out. Darkness enveloped everything. It was as if the passenger was controlling the inside and outside of the car. At that moment, I made a decision. I had to get out of the car and face the truth. I opened the door. The outside air was cold, windy, and terrifyingly silent. The darkness was so deep that it felt as if time had stopped. I took a few steps from the parking lot and looked back. The inside of my car was empty, yet it felt as if the passenger was standing right behind me. But there was no physical contact. They were like a being caught between the dead and the living. Suddenly a voice spoke from within me. "I have seen the whole city, Mira, and you will see it too." All at once the surroundings changed. The shadows moving toward the edge of the city seemed like the passenger's footprints. I followed them, but every time I turned, the passenger was everywhere and nowhere at once. It was as if the darkness carried them, filling the environment. I realized then, the presence of this passenger feeds only on my fear. Every time my heart beat faster, the air grew colder and the shadows grew longer. I was just a taxi driver, but at this hour of the night I was playing a game between the dead and the living. Hours passed, but the passenger was still with me. No matter how much I ran, their shadow appeared before me at every corner. It was as if there was no turning back, as if everything about that night had already been written. The darkness inside my car had become even denser. The passenger was no longer visible at all, but I felt their every move. It was as if the entire city was under their control. Every time I turned into a street, the shadows repeated their tracks. "We've reached the end now, Mira?" The voice echoed in my mind. For a moment, my phone started flashing. On the screen, my own reflection appeared, but the back seat was empty. I decided I must get out of the car and face reality. I opened the door and stepped out into the dark city. The passenger followed me from behind like an invisible force in the gloom. I took a step, and suddenly the passenger vanished. All that remained in my car was a wave of cold. It was as if all the terror of the night had stayed with me. From that moment on, I never worked as a night taxi driver again. Every night in the darkness, even if the back seat is empty, I remember those eyes. Every time I see a shadow, a feeling from that night returns. Dear viewers, this story is based on a true experience. At this hour of the night, it is very difficult to distinguish what is real from what is a dream. If this story was terrifying to you, share your thoughts in the comments section and subscribe to my channel so you can watch more horror stories. Remember, do not be alone at night. And always look closely at the back seat.